Hello, Deborah with Preservation Publications and Preservation 2012 on YouTube. Today I'd like to talk to you about what we can all expect as far as going through television and internet withdrawal as the collapse continues and we move into the post-oil era. These are the typical symptoms of addiction. When we watch television, we have very intense physiological changes that go on in our brain and our bodies. It's through the repetitive cycles of increased anxiety and release that causes our addiction. Whenever you watch television, you get excited and then you're calmed. You get excited and then you're calmed. And this has a negative and positive reinforcing system on our minds and our bodies. The first time I noticed this in myself was about 10 years ago when I watched the movie Armageddon on television. I found myself getting very anxious, and I was trying to figure out why that was happening. And then I realized that I was watching a series of scene changes that were very intense and very short. They were so short, in fact, that you could not measure them in time. We're talking a second to a half a second flashes of information. As these flashes increased, the music and the intensity of the music increased until I got to the point where I had to literally turn away and not watch it anymore. The anxiety was so great. Once I turned away, there was immediately a calm and a release. I couldn't hang on to the movie long enough for them to bring me down to the release portion of the cycle. It was at that time that I decided that television just plain wasn't good for me, and I had to stop watching. And it took me 10 years to break that addiction. The problem is that once I patted myself on the back and so arrogantly stated how unique I was for having broken this addiction, I realized I hadn't broken it at all. I simply replaced it. And what I replaced it with was the internet. And the internet is infinitely more addictive. To give you an idea of just how powerful television viewing is, we have had to redesign our entire educational system to address the learning styles of children that have been placed in front of television since they were very little. We all believe that such children's programming as Sesame Street would enhance our children's ability to think and reason and learn and give them a head start on education. When the fact of the matter is, what we did was put them through a process of changing the way they intake information and changing the way that they learn. So just prior to the enactment of No Child Left Behind, our students and our children were failing miserably in the system. They couldn't read, they couldn't write, they couldn't sit still in a classroom. They were failing miserably. So No Child Left Behind was enacted, and a part of that was changing the way we teach our children. Instead of teaching through reading and teaching through lecture, which has been historically the way that we have taught our children, we have to teach them by rote. Garbage in, garbage out, just kind of like a computer. You put the information in and you have them spit it out through standardized tests. Our children cannot reason, and our children have lost the ability to utilize critical thinking. And it's not just television. It's television and video games and social media. It's cell phones and iPods and any number of gadgets that our children utilize, and we utilize as well. When we watch television, the most we do is sit and watch. We might hold a remote and click it and click it turn up the volume or turn it down or change stations. But that's the most interaction that we have. For the most part, we're just taking in information. With computers and cell phones and iPods and so forth, we have digital manipulation, which engages us. It forces interaction that enhances the addictive qualities. So as we're sitting in front of our computers, we're pushing buttons and we're selecting this and we're selecting that and we're watching this and we're watching that, and it's interactive. We're digitally interacting with what is happening on the screen. Likewise, with cell phones, kids are texting, they're interacting digitally and playing video games. It's a physical interaction with what's going on that reinforces addiction. So to give you an idea of how powerful this addiction actually is, when you take the gadgets away from the children, a couple of things happen. Self-destructive behaviors increase and environmental destruction increases. The addiction is so powerful that kids cannot cope. They have no way to solve life skills unless it can be resolved in 10 seconds. They have no long-term ability to deal with long-term goals and plans to assist in the guidance for their survival. And public education today just simply reinforces the addiction. These are the symptoms of withdrawal. And to understand how this is played out in adults, in our own thinking and our own vision of the world, let me give you a couple of examples that you might be able to see in yourself. We have all developed righteous rage against the bad guy. Whenever we watch television and somebody does something that would be considered bad or wrong in society, and they are labeled the bad guy, and you recognize them as the bad guy, when they finally die, we're delighted. We have peace and we're delighted that the bad guy is gone. As a result of this, and this is just my opinion, we have one of the most profound imprisonment systems in the world because of television. We want the bad guys to pay. How many times have we all gone shopping to buy things that we don't need because the television has convinced us or put in our minds that these are items that we do need? The television has told us who the beautiful people are. And I guarantee you it's not you and me. I also guarantee you that our young people are suffering from bulimia and anorexia, trying to be one of the beautiful people. And if you think it's bad on television, take a look at what's happening on the internet. AOL has introduced a new way of presenting its logo. It changes the picture behind the AOL logo several times a day so that you're looking at the picture and trying to figure out what the picture is, but your brain is picking up AOL. That's a form of branding. The same thing happens across the board. Another example is Google. When you bring the Google page up, you're going to see fancy designs and pictures and so forth, kind of intermixing with the Google name. Now your brain sees Google while your mind's trying to figure out what you're looking at. This is branding. And it happens all the time. And the reason it's more dangerous on the internet is because it's much more subtle and it's not auditory. It's purely visual. And so even though you're reading an article about survivalism, let's say, it's surrounded by ads that your brain sees and your mind doesn't. Your mind's on the article, but your brain sees the advertisements all around it. This is branding, and it's much more powerful than just a simple commercial on television. And we can see how damaging that is just by looking at what's going on in our society. Now today, you can find televisions everywhere. Not only do we have them in just about every room in our own home, you find them in banks, you find them in grocery stores, you find them in restaurants. Any place people gather, you're going to find televisions. And the reason why is because they calm and control. The power of it is that it keeps your brain shut down. And it keeps you sedated. And that's why televisions are springing up all over the place. So for a long time I wondered how we were going to survive our addictions to substances like pharmaceuticals and nicotine and soda and alcohol. And I did a lot of research trying to find ways to combat that, until I realized that even though withdrawal from those substances are going to be horrifying, it's only going to affect a small portion of the population. What's really going to be devastating is when every single one of us are denied access to television and to internet, when we don't have that instant connection. I don't know how to combat that. I can't imagine the first thing that we will have to do to survive that. And to be going through those withdrawals individually and watching our children go through those withdrawals at the same time, I don't even want to think about that horror. As the collapse continues and we move into a post-oil age, a lot of what we think is going to be chaos, having to change to a new paradigm, is not going to be due to the collapse at all. It's going to be due to addiction withdrawal from television and internet. And like I said before, I gave up my addiction to TV, but I didn't give it up. I simply replaced it with something stronger and more powerful. And I suspect that all of us have done the same thing. If you're watching this video, you're probably watching it from a gadget. So we need to think about this and we need to figure it out. And the only thing that I can suggest is that we recognize it as it's happening. As we go through the withdrawal, that we understand that what we're losing is our connection with television and our connection with internet. Another very significant change that we'll be going through is that many of us only communicate with family and friends via internet, email, and texting on cell phones and through Skype and so forth. When that's eliminated, we are going to be so far removed from our loved ones who live across the country and because of these connections feel like they're living next door. The isolation is going to be exceptional. I'd like to say that we'll have access to our loved ones through the mail, but I don't think that that's a system that's sustainable. And it may take many generations before it is rebuilt to the point that it is viable. And for many of us, particularly our children, who have lost the ability to communicate one-on-one, and have lost the ability to socialize because of the way we take in information, who text each other instead of talk to each other, this is going to be an astronomical change for them. And the only thing that I can think of to even curtail this is learn now how to reestablish connections with the people around us, because that's the only way we're going to survive this. We need to connect our children to other children and eliminate the gadgets and allow them to rediscover social skills that are going to see them through this transition. And so ultimately I'm at a loss as to how to deal with this situation. If any of you have ideas, I'd love to hear them. And welcome your comments, because this is something that I don't think many of us have considered, and it's not something that I have considered until recently. So think about it. Until next time, for our families, our neighbors, our friends, and our communities, preservation.